This is OK State of Mind. I'm your host, Dee Harris. I'm thrilled to be joined with a guest co-host, Micah Mesker. She's the Senior Program Director from our Family and Children's Services Women in Recovery program. And today we're joined by Darryl, Turpin, and Wheeler. They're international experts on criminal behavior, substance use, and mental health. Darryl and Guy are driving forces behind HEAT, which stands for Habilitation Empowerment Accountability Therapy, and HER, which is Habilitation Empowerment Recovery, which are culturally tailored group counseling interventions explicitly designed for the Black community. Currently, they're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working with Family and Children's Services to implement programs like this in our jail and prison diversion programs, substance use disorder programs, and women's justice programs. So, welcome.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
So, you're in from out of town. You're from Kentucky and Florida, correct?
I'm Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay. And how did you guys meet, and how did this all come about, this HEAT and HER program?
Well, I think we actually met from a phenomena that's described in a book by Dr. Danielle Tatum called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? So we met at a conference. It was a treatment court conference. It was actually the first one. It was in Las Vegas. And there were very few people of color at this conference, so Guy and I just sort of gravitated toward one another. There was a lot of, energy between he and I, and we just sort of connected and started talking right away about equity as it relates to treatment. We started talking about treatment outcomes, how well are people of color doing in that model at that time that was called treatment court model. How well are people of color doing in that model? And our conversations were pretty, they were pretty deep and pretty, it opened my mind to understand that while we saw during the crack cocaine epidemic, a lot of nonviolent people of color showing up in the justice system, those were opportunities that court had to merge with treatment services and tailoring their treatment more toward meeting the needs of that population, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where our conversation started. It was like, okay, what are we doing by he and I both being treatment professionals? We were right away talking about how well are we tailoring our treatment to meet the needs of that population. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, at that time, it was mixed. It was probably not doing so well at that time.
Particularly when it comes to access.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was two different issues. It was retention and successful completion and access.
Right,
it was
correct.
Actually a couple issues there because they weren't doing well either.
Right. Well, I mean, and access has been a barrier for quite some time. And,
Yes.
Still is.
And it still is. And what other barriers were you seeing for there to be this big divide between the treatment outcomes from Black communities and other communities?
Well, we saw gaps. There were obviously gaps in services, particularly for that population, African-American males, which is where we started. We wanted to, I guess Guy and I felt that we wanted to start where the fire was burning the hottest. And at that time, young Black men involved in for nonviolent offenses were overly represented in the justice system. And they were failing miserably in treatment courts. Mm-hmm. In some places, they were reporting 9% successful completion. 9% of African-American males, 18 to 25-year-old, were completing the program successfully, 9%. So Guy and I were going around the country beating a drum saying, hey, something has to change because basically this so-called treatment court model that's supposed to be innovative and creative is actually perpetuating the same institutionalized practices of racism toward this population as court as normal was doing. So what's the difference? We might as well just do court as normal when this model should be something different. I mean, Guy and I are not curriculum developers. That's not what we started off. That's not why we went to college. But we just started in this work as a result of just seeing the gaps and actually saying, look, we need something that's going to be culturally responsive, something gender specific, something developmentally targeted to a population of people to meet the unique needs that they have and that what they present, the clinical implications that they exhibit in a treatment setting. So that's how we got started. Not because of wanting to start a new business or thinking it was a great idea. We were like, hey, the field desperately needs this. Simultaneously, I was on the board of directors for National Association of Drug Court Professionals. And we began to look at data. They began to do research and present data showing this glowing disparities that existed with women with people of color and with women even. Mm-hmm. But it was more glaring, particularly with populations of color, particularly the young African American males. So it was a perfect marriage. So we started our work, and our first research was in a treatment court because Guy and I had years of work in that field. We began to first have this model tested in that setting. Now, it's not a treatment court model, but it fits well in treatment court as well. And by our connections and our years of work in that field, we first began to do our clinical research in the drug court. And we've got a lot of more work to do. Mm-hmm. People are still asking the question, why do you even need these type of interventions? And unfortunately, we're still having to answer that question. We got a lot of more. HEAT is now kind of a boutique program in many places. Now, we're working with places like Michigan, Missouri, Sonoma County, and Oregon. There are a few places that are trying to make it more accessible systemically. Right now, for the most part, HEAT is a boutique, meaning we offer a small little boutique over there with a few clients, and for many jurisdictions, just checking a box. Like, okay, we are culturally aware, and we've got that Black program over there, and we're checking the box that we are dealing with equity and inclusion. And that's a good start.
Right.
And we've got a lot of good research from those type of boutique programs. But I want HEAT to be a part of the menu. I want when you got a client that walks in the doors of Family and Children's Services, that HEAT is one of the options of services that they get delivered for whoever walks in the door. I want it more systemically available to whoever needs it, no matter where they are on the continuum. And we're not there yet. So I want to be more involved in systems change. Mm-hmm. I want to be more involved in addressing the barriers and make our system more equitable, meaning that everyone has a right for good treatment services that are tailored to meet the needs, the individual needs of that person. And how can we change the system to make those type of services available no matter where you are in the continuum is really where I think we need to go.
I think you just stated a manifesto. Mm-hmm. Guy, how do you feel?
I love the idea of the systematic, all right? But I think what separates us from anybody else, and that's the biggest question, because somebody's going to ask you the question is, what are you different?
Why are you special?
Why are you so special? And I think one of the reasons that we're so special, first of all, we allow the individual to look at themselves. And once they end up looking at themselves, because that's where the evolution starts. The real evolution is we want them to look at themselves so they can be held responsible. Despite all the issues that we have in America and everything else, we still got to get to take a look at self. What do I need to do based upon what I am addressing, the issues that I'm dealing with within my own family? How about the issues that I'm dealing with in myself? How about the enemy that's within me?
Yeah.
Because once you start confronting the enemy that is within me, they can start addressing the enemy on the outside.
Right.
So those are the type of self-issues that we want them to deal with. That's what separates us. The other idea is the idea of family. A lot of the populations that we're serving, that's whether it's coming out of prisons, jails, reentry, some of the issues that's going on in the family is traumatic.
Oh, yeah.
It's chaos. It's a lot. Let me tell you, in the room this week, there's an enormous amount of pain. Mm-hmm. There was so much pain, father issues.
Mother issues.
All right. And hearing so much trauma that I don't even want to go into the details of the sexual issues that's going on with a lot of these ladies that's happening in their lives.
Yeah.
And that is very painful to us. Yeah. Very, very painful. And we're going to have to address this. We cannot hide behind the bush any longer with some of the issues that these women are going through in America All right. So this, the trafficking and all this is involved as well. The drug usage, incest rate, all these types of things. We're going to have to be much more sensitive about these kinds of issues because we're dealing in America right now, particularly with the population we're talking about between 14 and 24, the suicide rate has increased.
It is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Go ahead.
Because you were talking about trends, staying abreast to issues with
Well, and
African-American.
youth black suicide is up too.
It's amazing. Suicide rate is off the charts. And the question is, why is that happening? What has been the impact of gentrification, removing community protective factors where families are now being removed, isolated? What has been the impact of that?
I think that's one little tiny piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to start addressing suicide. Also with African Americans that we're seeing, Guy talks a lot about this, is drug of choice.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing drug of choice with African American populations that we've never seen before. There were certain drugs that black populations didn't use.
It's true.
Those we saw with white populations, but we didn't. Now all of a sudden, we're seeing drug of choice changing to where there's no longer a drug that predominantly whites are using or blacks are using. It's like
Across the board.
Across the board. So we're seeing suicide, suicidality, and drug of choice, overdoses, which we're not paying attention to, the fentanyl overdoses with black populations, off the chart. And those are the kind of things we have to pay attention to, these trends that we're seeing differently than we did even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
As a therapist 10 years ago, some of this we didn't even see. We didn't see suicide rates 10, 15 years ago with black populations. It was not even thought of. But what's going on in our community to make those things happen now, and the drug of choice and the overdoses?
And the number of women going to prison.
That part.
Okay, because the family structure changes.
Right.
I mean, we just have to be kind of sensitive to that. And I honor you guys for having the chutzpah to take a very serious look at it.
What?
I said chutzpah. I certainly use that word. I'm allowed to use that.
Yes, you are.
Can we say that on there? Okay.
Well, I'll bleep it out later.
No, it's really what you said. The continuum of care. And it ties into what I said about systemically. I think we're going to have to look at prisons, because one of the problems is people who need this don't have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make this more accessible? So I think we're going to have to think broader in just doing more than just outpatient services or residential. We're going to have to go into the prisons. We're going to go into jails, halfway houses. I think the continuum of care piece to the systemic piece is a vital piece. So I just want to make sure that as you all are thinking about implementing this, that you think about this from not just a systemic, but also to make sure the continuum of care is being addressed with this. So,
and I would like to see community mapping. Mm-hmm. You need to get the entire community involved with this.
Oh, yeah.
All right? Because if you get the whole community involved, drug usage, the mental health issues that they're dealing with as well, why isn't connected to the YMCA, Faith Farm, places of residential? Everybody needs to be connected. The church, mosque, synagogue, the entire community needs to be involved because our community is involved. Mm-hmm. Our families are involved. These women are involved. These men are involved.
And that's who they belong to.
That's who they belong to.
They belong to the community. They don't belong to programs.
That's correct.
Right? So getting the community involved, you're absolutely right. Getting the community involved, maybe even developing an advisory board and having clergy, business owners, advocates, social justice people, survivors, and people who invested into healing the community on a part of the advisory board, not only to get advice and to help guide some of the initiatives, but also get the support from the community that, hey, this may be something that could help heal our community. And having the people that you're representing a part of that serve as an advisory capacity, I think would be a vital part.
And get them skills as well. If these guys going into the courts, get them skills, because if they don't have skills, I spell skills, S-K-I-L-L-S. But if you take the two S's off it, they're going to get killed.
Nice.
So put him in front of the courts and say, hey, let this guy get his GED. Let's get some skills, because if he can be placed in a position of ownership, that he owns something.
Right.
He owns his own business. Then he has something to give back to the community.
Exactly.
So get them trained to do something.
Well, we have some work to do, and I'm excited that we have this tool in the toolbox to help us do that work. Thank you guys so much today, and safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kudos to your agency, Family and Children's Services, for inviting us and having the, what'd you say, the
Chutzpah.
The chutzpah.
I'll have to
And
bleep
your
it out
boss, Miss
later.
Are we gonna
Mimi,
bleep
Miss
that out?
Mimi, you gotta say, to give her credit.
for doing this. No, really, it takes a lot of courage to do something like this.
Thank you as well.
To transform a community in the way that you have done and invested. Kudos to you. And again, thank you to your entire team that has made us feel
Miss
welcome.
Mimi, we got to make sure we give her credit.
Oh, that's absolutely
She's
Mimi.
been awesome. She has been awesome.
She has.
We just want to make
High
sure we
five,
give her
Mimi.
credit.
Woo!
Oh, let's go.
Absolutely,
I better 5 her.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm not going to give you 5.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And if you come back to Tulsa, we'll have to speak again. There's 100 other things I'd like to discuss.
All right.